What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. How about that? Right on the nose at 8:15 on time today, and excited to talk about the week that was in the Big 12 and the week that is in the Big 12, because now the coaching carousel has fired up in the league. We have one coach fired, one coach being retained, perhaps somewhat controversially. I certainly don't get the vibe that the fan base of said head coach is very happy about him coming back, but we'll see. We'll see. I'd be very curious to know, Baylor fans, what you think of the decision by Baylor to maintain Dave Aranda as their head coach. But look, Oklahoma State gave everybody a hell of a scare this weekend. My God, Oklahoma State, could you not have messed around that much and just let us all have some solace in the fact that you could still win the conference championship and have it not be Texas on the way out the door? I was sitting in this exact spot, basically, that I'm sitting in right now, watching that game, just like visualizing in my head 80,000 people, half red, half orange, in AT&T Stadium in Arlington, just chanting SEC at the top of their lungs the entire game. That would have been awful. That would have been absolutely awful for everybody to endure. Instead, we at least now have a puncher's chance at getting a win. Now, I know Oklahoma State is a 10.5 or 11.5 point dog, depending on where it is that you're looking. But there's a chance here, all right? There's a chance. Pokes are going to have to play better than they have the last 3 weeks, though. Certainly post Bedlam. Bedlam. I'm seeing a lot of questions. Boy, a lot of interest in Mike Elko and Texas A&M, which we can certainly talk about, too, during the chat today. Because Texas A&M has hired a head coach, Michigan State has hired a head coach, and it is not Lance Leipold, it is not Chris Kleiman, it is not Mike Gundy, who we even saw throw it out there in one of the articles. It is not Matt Campbell. None of the hot coaching names in the Big 12 took those jobs at Michigan State and Texas A&M. So dodging some bullets early on in the coaching carousel in the league, and that is certainly news. That is certainly newsworthy. But We'll also talk about everything that happened in the league. K-State and Iowa State played one of the weirdest games you're ever going to see. Texas and Oklahoma obviously just smashed their competition that they had to take care of to maintain their chances at a Big 12 championship game appearance. Oklahoma State, as I mentioned, really struggled. West Virginia found a way. Was not as easy, perhaps, as you would have guessed, but they get an 8-win season. Kansas pulls off an 8-win season in predictably dominant fashion at Cincinnati. Who am I missing? UCF going to a bowl game. So happy to see that for the Knights as well. You guys know, though, if you've been here before, you can control where the show is going tonight. You can dictate the content. You can do so by clicking the $sign below the chat box. That is how you can make your chat a super chat. It will attach a donation to your chat and put it in a separate column for me, like Alan and Snake I see already have. So I will get to them first here. But there are 160 people already in this chat, nearly 170. Now we're at 170 in the chat. So I will not be able to monitor everything that's going on tonight. If you want to be a part of the show, click the $sign below the chat box, attach a donation, make it a super chat, and you will be a part of the show tonight. Control the content, make your voice heard, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 conference realignment, college football, college basketball content here on this channel, all on a weekly basis. Live shows Wednesdays and Sundays. They are a blast. If you have not subscribed, highly encourage it to make sure that you are a part of that when we have these, because they are a really good time. If you could like the video, that is a totally free way to support the channel. Just one click. Just give me a click. Like that video. Really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you could leave a comment in the comment section of the video before, during, or after. I don't know why I always say before, during, or after. That helps me as well with that algorithm. So please jump on that another free way. And that's whether you love me, hate me, agree, disagree, any of that is fine. But if you could do that, that would be wonderful. And if you are catching up to this after the fact and you want to support the channel, you can do so on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4. In fact, if you have a question or comment, and again, you are not watching this live and you leave it with your Venmo submission there, I will make sure to get to it on the next show as well. So that is definitely something you can do. And with that, we are off and running, people. We are off and running with Alan tonight. What's up, Alan? Appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for your kind donation and for being a part of the show here tonight. Alan says, knowing they miss Utah and K-State, how do you view Texas Tech next season? Boy, that's pretty big to miss Utah and K-State. We'll see what K-State is going to be. I anticipate some very interesting K-State news that's probably not terribly surprising coming up here shortly within the next 24 to 48 hours that will affect how next year looks. I'm going to look at, I was going to bring up Texas Tech football schedule 2024. Good old FBS schedule. Good old FBSschedules.com, man. I love FBSschedules.com. Well, they've got Oregon. That obviously will be tough. But I tell you what, at Arizona for the first Big 12 game, I hope people are not overlooking this. And I know that I seem to be like the driver of the Arizona hype machine on this channel lately, but I'm just so impressed by them. I watched some of the Territorial Cup on Saturday, and they just blitzed Arizona State. Arizona is going to be really good. That's a tough one. Then you got to go to Ames. And, man, like, I guess these are not in order. That is my fault. I'm an idiot. I'm reading these like they're in order. But that's a tough road trip at Arizona. That's a tough road trip at Iowa State. That's a tough road trip at Oklahoma State. Man, we'll see about TCU. The home games seem very manageable. Arizona State, Colorado, Baylor, Cincinnati, West Virginia. Those all seem pretty manageable, but those are tough road trips, including the one in Autzen at Oregon. So Arizona, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. I still think, while missing K-State and Utah, that's a pretty tough Big 12 schedule for how things are going to look next year, and probably similar to what most schedules will look like next year, at least on paper. Here's the thing. And a Tech fan had DM'd me and asked me about what I thought about Tech's quarterback situation going into next year the other day. I don't know. I'm just not, and some of this is probably colored by I just watched them go up against Texas, and Texas is a great defense, just a great defense. I just don't. I wonder what the ceiling is on Baron Morton. I don't know. The question, I believe, was phrased to me like, what do you think about Morton versus Shuck? And I was like, I always felt like Shuck had a higher ceiling. I just feel like I've seen him. He seems to have more arm talent than Baron Morton. Now, I got pushed back immediately, and admittedly, I mean, I have not watched every single Texas Tech game this year, but I felt like Shuck had a higher ceiling. He was just totally made of glass. I don't know. I just haven't really seen it with Baron Morton. I also, I saw a really rough version of Texas Tech where Baron Morton got knocked out of the game when they played K-State. So I'm giving you plenty of grains of salt with my opinion on that. But I guess the other thing I would add is, like, Joy just has to learn how to start a season. I mean, we've seen 2 years in a row where Tech has kind of struggled out of the gates, been a little bit slow, and then been able to turn it on with really nice finishes, and has put together a couple of pretty nice Big 12 seasons, 5-4, right? I believe both Big 12 seasons. So if they can learn how to come out of the gates a little bit stronger, I would feel better. But I just wonder about where things are at with Baron Morton in terms of the ceiling of this team. So right now, to be honest, I kind of see Tech being pretty similar to what they've been the last few years, like 7 to 9 wins, with 9 really pushing that on the upper end there. So maybe more like 6 to 9. That's a wider gap, but like a 6 to 9 win team next year for Texas Tech. That's kind of what I see right now, just because I'm not completely sold on the Baron Morton thing. But look, I like Joey McGuire, and you guys know I have an affinity certainly for Texas Tech. So I'd love to see them be successful. And I think Joey McGuire is pretty good, and he is still recruiting very well. So if they get more and more talent into the program, obviously things are going to continue to go up. But that's my initial read on it. So hope that helps, Alan. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you supporting the channel, my friend. Snake. Holy bleep, UCF is bowl eligible. GKCO. Someone want to explain GKCO to me? Feel like that's something I should probably know. But yes, shout out to UCF for becoming bowl eligible. I was happy for UCF that they got that done. And scoff at it if you will. I know the newcomers this year had some struggles, as was probably to be expected, at least for most outside of the fan bases, which may have been too overconfident. And I certainly think UCF fits into that, at least the most online version of their fan base. But 27-13, they beat Houston. UCF gets to 6-6 in a year in which they're transitioning to a new league, in a year in which they have a major quarterback injury. And to me, it was very clear by the end of the year that John Rice Plumlee made them a significantly better team. McLean was just way too up and down. It was way too erratic to be able to really rely on much there. they're a complete and utter collapse against Baylor away from being 7-5, right? I mean, that's a game that they absolutely should have won. So all told, that's not terrible. That's not terrible at all for UCF. In fact, like if you would have told me they were going to be 6-6 with just a miracle Baylor pull a game out of the fire away from being 7-5, I would have said, yeah, that seems about right. I think that's about what my expectation would be for UCF. And I'm somebody that had a pretty high opinion of the long-term future of that program coming into the league. So congratulations, Snake. Congratulations, UCF fans, on becoming bowl eligible. I am certainly happy for you there. Browns and Beers. What's up, Browns and Beers? Thank you for being here. Browns and Beers chiming in a bit on the coaching carousel here. Says Neil Brown is back. Just want West Virginia to be in contention for the title game next year. If we keep everyone we should be. Great offensive snow game by K-State and Iowa State. I would disagree, Browns and Beers. I would disagree. Go Pokes, and Cincinnati did suck. Go Pokes, yes. I think all of us here, majority, maybe MJ Allen is not going to be on the Go Pokes bandwagon, but most of us here are going to be on the Go Pokes bandwagon this weekend. All right, let's address this. Neil Brown, I did see my guy. Shout out to my guy Mountaineer Paul. He sent me the and you guys should all go subscribe to his YouTube channel right now. But he sent me a clip of Neil Brown, or it was Tony Caridi, the play-by-play voice of West Virginia, talking about like, hey, Neil Brown is going to be back next year, and like I get why some fans would still have some reservations about it, but I don't know that any fan could have realistically thought that Neil Brown, coming off of an 8-4 season, regardless of what you say about the schedule, I can't believe anybody would legitimately have thought Neil Brown was not going to be back after this year. And you got to give him some credit, man. I mean, the dude was picked last in the league. Did not seem like there was a lot of life or a lot of hope. And now all of a sudden it does feel like there is, right? Like West Virginia has some momentum. They have some young talent that is going to be returning, that's playing well, and they have the potential to win 9 games. We'll see what happens with the bowl game pecking order and who it is that they're going to play. And those are always a real crapshoot and probably don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But I know Paul was framing it to me like, hey, I mean, will West Virginia maybe be ranked next season? I still think the general national / regional opinion of West Virginia is going to be more like schedule driven, nice story, but I would be surprised if they get ranked in the top 25, but I could be wrong. And maybe the pendulum swings the opposite way from being everybody too low on West Virginia to now a little bit higher on West Virginia based on what they did this past year. But either way, I mean, who cares? That was part of my message too. Like, who cares about the rankings? I mean, West Virginia should feel like they've got a puncher's chance to be competitive toward the top of the league next year, with things really opening up very wide open. So if it were me, I would still wonder again about the ceiling with Neil Brown at West Virginia, but he certainly did enough to earn another year, and he certainly did enough to earn some optimism, I think, from most Mountaineer fans. So that's where I would be with it right now. I'd be pretty cautiously optimistic about the future of the program with Neil Brown. The thing that I didn't get was like, I mean, I guess I get it. Like, fans are fans, and it's a sexy name and a guy that has a national championship ring. But the Jimbo Fisher stuff at West Virginia, I mean, like, I understand someone being from the area. I understand thinking, hey, this guy just got axed. Let's bring him back home. Guys, I think Jimbo's washed. Like, I mean, I say this with all due respect. Like, I think West Virginia can do a lot better if you really wanted to move on from Neil Brown. I think you can do much better than Jimbo Fisher in 2023. Like, the guy, I mean, Florida State seemed kind of happy to see him go. Things were getting a little messy in Tallahassee by the time he left. And then we've seen what it was at Texas A&M. I mean, he used all the money and resources that they had to recruit well, but what did it ultimately get him? Not much. And just a lot of frustration and a massive buyout. You know, it was good for Jimbo, not good for Texas A&M. I don't think that would be great. I think you would way overpay, and I think it would be very disappointing if he came to Morgantown. So just my 2 cents on that. But I get why it's a popular fan theory and people wanting that. If you're going to move on from Neil Brown, just open it up to a national search, and like West Virginia can find somebody, I think, better than this version of Jimbo Fisher that we currently have in 2023. So, the K-State Iowa State game, I'll get to that in just a second, Browns and Beers, because I see Neilio is up next. And Neilio, my guy Neilio, looks like he was actually in attendance at the game. He's going to bring that up. So we'll talk about it here in just a moment. But yes, go Pokes. Cincy, rough year, man. Rough year. I certainly don't expect them or didn't expect them to get rid of Scott Satterfield after 1 year, but I don't know how anybody can be feeling very good about what's going on there. It's Cincy. They need a quarterback, man. You better go find a quarterback in the portal. I will say that much. That's one place to start for the Bearcats. Hung tough, a little bit with Kansas for, the first quarter and a half or so. I was keeping an eye on that while I was watching the K-State game, but felt like a matter of time to me. I thought KU could have totally sleptwalked through that thing and still won by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And they did. They did. More than that, in fact. All right. So appreciate you, Browns and Beers. Thank you for your support. Same to you, Neilio. You deserve a badge of honor, my friend, for sticking it out in that game in the cold and the snow at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I did not wind up going based on, the weather forecast was gross. It was like I didn't want to get stuck in Manhattan for a while. Just had too much going on trying to get unpacked here in Kansas City. But Neilio says, good evening, John. Still don't know what we'll say hell. Still don't know what the hell I witnessed out in Manhattan, but that's how it goes. Hope you had a great Turkey Day. Yeah, for anybody who did not see the K-State Iowa State game, one of the absolute weirdest games that you are ever going to see. K-State ran 102 plays. Iowa State ran 35. Okay, 102 plays. Iowa State 35. K-State had 32 first downs. Iowa State had 10. K-State had 42 minutes of time of possession. Iowa State had 18. And yet, Iowa State won the game 42-35 because they had 5 60-plus yard touchdowns. Just a ridiculous stat, 5 60-plus yard touchdowns. And I mean, the best I can come up with, K-State had a top 4 defense in the Big 12, like all year. It was a pretty solid defense. Now, the bugaboo had been at times giving up explosive plays, but nothing like this. I mean, this was just on a completely different level. And really, the only thing I can say is just something about the snow and not having good traction there. I mean, it's going to put the defense at a disadvantage in a lot of spots because they're having to react as opposed to the offensive player. At least you're kind of on the offensive, quite literally, in terms of determining where you're going to go, which step is coming next. It gets harder to be a defender. But, I mean, Iowa State wasn't giving up 5 60-plus yard plays. They were relatively fine. K-State's offense, I think, did a solid job scoring 35 points. But what the hell, man? I mean, K-State probably wins that game if it's not for the worst, literally the worst defensive performance by yards per play wise. My guy Cole Manbeck was on this. KSU_fan was on this. There was a game in 2018 in which Kyler Murray led Oklahoma to 700 yards of offense against K-State. This was 5 yards per play better than that. It was 2 yards per play better than a 2010 game when K-State lost to Nebraska on a Thursday night, in which Taylor Martinez ran for like damn near 300 yards. I mean, that felt like the worst K-State defensive performance I'd ever seen in my life. And this was 2 yards per play worse. Just unbelievable. Iowa State had a 71-yard touchdown run on the first play of the game. They had a 77-yard touchdown run later. Jalen Noel had a 79-yard touchdown catch and an 82-yard touchdown catch, both of which were catch and run. And the 82-yard touchdown pass, if there's a play in the game that just broke me, it was that one. It's 35-35. K-State's hanging in there with the offense still playing pretty well, despite the defense just every single time Iowa State had the ball giving up these massive plays. It's 3rd and 16, and they just dump it off to Jalen Noel like 6 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. He's over by the sideline. K-State has like 4 guys over there, and for whatever reason, they don't use the sideline as a defender, and somehow you just got to go watch the highlight. But there's no way. Jalen Noel just streaks down the sideline. I don't know. No one gets a hand on him. It was unbelievable. I have no idea what happened. I believe Chris Kleiman after the game, just based on what I'd heard, was about as mad as he's ever been. And I don't blame him. So I don't know. The last time a game like that happened for K-State, it was the Texas game in 2021 that they really should have won in Austin, but they blew. And there was some terrible offensive play calling. And after that was when Chris Kleiman fired his childhood friend, Courtney Messingham, as the offensive coordinator and made Colin Klein the OC. Now, Joe Klannerman, I think, has done a pretty good job as K-State's DC. I don't think he's getting fired, but I do wonder about if there will be some staff changes after that on down the totem pole. I mean, it was that kind of a loss, and it's not like it kept you out of the Big 12 championship or anything. But it did deflate the season a lot, cost you a chance at back-to-back 10-win seasons. You lose to a rival, and you're hurting the bowl pecking order, which I don't really care that much about that fact, but just how it deflates the season and what you're feeling about the program, and you got no chance really to go make it up. You just have to sit on this one for a while. I mean, it just definitely a taste that I would like to get out of my mouth. But conversely, I mean, you got to give Matt Campbell a ton of credit. I mean, look, they just basically took what K-State gave them on Saturday, but the guy finishes 7-5 in a year when everybody wrote them off because of the gambling scandal, and he's losing offensive starters, and they pieced it together. Now they've got a young quarterback who's returning that played really well this year. They've now got what looks to be a budding star, young running back who was just lit K-State up on Saturday. A lot of underclassmen that played for them this year. Suddenly Iowa State looks to be in really good position to compete toward the top of the Big 12 next year coming back. And Matt Campbell deserves a ton of credit for that. So I did want to make sure that gets mentioned. And I think I said fairly recently, like, I think Campbell is more guy. I don't think he has as high a ceiling as everybody projected for him early on in his tenure at Iowa State, but I think he's got a very high floor generally. And this was the type of year that absolutely proved that. Found a better quarterback, found a better freshman running back, ton of underclassmen. And after the gambling scandal, they finished 7-5 and cap it off with a win at K-State. And really, I mean, obviously I hate to admit it, but Campbell's got Kleiman's number. If not for a 1-point win in Ames last year where Iowa State dropped a pass that would have set up a game-winning field goal attempt, it would be 4 straight after Chris Kleiman. Now, Chris Kleiman legitimately won with probably a worse team in the first game that they played in Manhattan, or certainly at least even teams, beating Brock Purdy and company in that game. But it'd be 4 straight if not for a drop pass by Iowa State's best receiver last year. So, very frustrating, man. Very, very, very frustrating. Nick, what's going on? Neilio, by the way, appreciate you, man. And again, Godspeed after surviving that one and being there in person. Nick says the only thing more miserable than the weather yesterday in Stillwater was our offense in the first half, but Skate Gordon and our D comes through in the end. One more chance at adding to the out misery. Must have a fast start. Nick, my man, please, if you can relay this message to Mike Gundy, have them focused and get off to a better start. Like, what? I don't know what has happened the last 3 weeks to Oklahoma State, but they lose by 42 at UCF. They're down, 24-6 in this game against BYU at halftime. They were down 23-9 at Houston the week before. These sleepwalking starts are just dreadful, and they obviously never came out of the slumber against UCF. Cannot happen against Texas. Cannot happen. Texas has, when they have faltered, it's because they've kind of played around early on, right? And then they can flip the switch and explode late in games. You got to be able to take advantage of that. You cannot, if Texas is going to, feel their way out and not start fast, you've got to take advantage of that if you're Oklahoma State. I do worry about the Pokes running the ball against what is a very, very salty Texas run defense. Devondre Sweat is a pretty dominant force in the middle there. But I'm glad Oklahoma State gets the shot. I mean, it sure as hell beats the alternative with Oklahoma, the other team that would have been standing there. And the other part that I think is great for Oklahoma State, I think I saw Pistol Rick tweet this, but twice this year now, you've dealt Oklahoma just a heartbreaking, soul-crushing, last-second loss. They obviously thought they had it in Bedlam. You got them there, and then you get them here. You get them with this one where Oklahoma is just waiting, hoping that BYU can pull that thing off. And you ripped it away from them. So congratulations to the Pokes on that. I mean, 5 touchdowns for Ollie Gordon. That was ridiculous. He had to grind his way to get the yards, but he's got almost 1,600 yards rushing, leading the country. Tied a Barry Sanders record. That's always pretty good when you're doing that. Tied Barry Sanders record with the 5 touchdowns in the game. And just, I mean, I laugh when I start looking at what this year has been for Mike Gundy. If Mike Gundy can win the league this year, it will cap off, I think, just one of the most hilarious seasons that I can ever remember. Lose by 26 at home to South Alabama, lose by 42 at UCF, rip off 3 wins against top 25 teams, survive back-to-back wretched slow starts against BYU and Houston with the season on the line, win the last Bedlam and get eternal scoreboard there. And if he caps that off by winning a conference championship and beating Texas in their final Big 12 game and keeping them from winning a league championship the last 15 years in the league, that would just be Mike Gundy's magnum opus, man, his Mona Lisa. So let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Yeah, I watched almost the entire BYU Oklahoma State game yesterday, and yeah, it did not. I'm not going to lie. It did not feel like that was going to happen for a very long time there for Oklahoma State. Just a gross performance, but they pulled it together just in the nick of time when they needed it. And I would also say, like, BYU fans, I know, and I was fielding some people on Twitter like, hey, come on. Like, do we have to all be rooting for Oklahoma? It was nothing personal at all, BYU. That's all about Texas. That has nothing to do with Oklahoma State or you, or it was all about Texas and Oklahoma, just what's best for the league. But there's something to build on there the last 2 weeks for BYU. I was more impressed by BYU the last 2 weeks of the season in losses than I was at any point of this year, sans maybe the Arkansas game, because at the time I thought that was fairly impressive. Arkansas turned out to be a real dud this year. But, man, I mean, found a way to run the ball better the last couple of weeks of the regular season, just played really gritty and tough, and had both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, 2 of the top 3 teams in the league, completely on the ropes. So BYU deserves a lot of credit for that, and I would hope that BYU fans are sensing some optimism from that, albeit I understand that there are some frustrations with Kalani Sitake and not getting bowl eligible here in year 1 in the Big 12. But anyway, it was certainly a very, very interesting game. It provided a lot more entertainment for me on a Saturday than I thought I was going to have. So I will give the Pokes that. It made it a much more entertaining Saturday than I anticipated it was going to be. I promise, I know everybody that's here for the Gary Patterson tease on the video and the Big 12 coaching carousel. I'm going to get to that in just a moment because I can already see that Arturo has asked me about that. So I will get to it here in just a moment after I field Joe's super chat here. But I will remind you, if you want to hop in and you want to control the content, ask a question, make your voice heard, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 and conference realignment content on a week in, week out basis, click the $ below the chat box. That is how you can get in here. We've got over 400 people in here, so I can't keep up with the regular chat. You will have to hit me with a super chat there. It is much appreciated, all of you guys who do support the channel. If you could like the video also, that helps me a lot. If you're in here and you haven't liked it yet, just one click, very easy way to support the channel. Leave a comment in the comment section of the video during or after as well. That helps. And if you're catching this after the fact, it's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to support the channel as well. All right, Joe. Joe, appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Great to see you as always. Joe says, well, headed to Arlington this next Saturday against a very familiar foe. I had a feeling O State would somehow end up playing OU and Texas. And thumbs down for the snow. Yes, thumbs down for the snow. That it must have sounds like weather in Stillwater was crappy too. I know I saw the crowd there was a little bit limited too, which may have contributed some to the slow start, right? Just a little bit more of a lethargic environment. It certainly hurt the crowd in Manhattan with, like 5 to 7 inches of snow that came down, and a lot of people that have to travel from other parts of Kansas or the Kansas City area, with a lot of people coming from there, about a 2-hour drive. That really hurt the crowd there. So yeah, that was pretty lame on Saturday. I am with you on that. And I love the fact that Oklahoma State winds up playing Texas. I said that at the beginning of the year when we got the schedule. I didn't love the fact that Oklahoma State, Texas was a game that we were not getting in the regular season. Those are typically great games. Oklahoma State has played very well in a number of those games, and I love watching them duke it out. So it seems very appropriate. This seems like a pretty appropriate way for the Big 12 as we've known it, essentially. Obviously, we have the 4 new teams this year. But Texas, their end of the Big 12 being in a Big 12 championship game against Mike Gundy, a guy who has produced a consistently better program than Texas for the last decade and a half. He gets a chance to put the final nail in their coffin on the way out the door. Now, I will say this about Texas, okay, who beat Texas Tech badly, 57-7. Texas deserves to talk, man. They deserve to talk right now. We'll see if they back it up in the championship game, but as much as we hate it, Texas has earned it. Now, they came really close with a backup quarterback when they had to roll with Malik Murphy to blowing it, and that would have been amazing. But when they've got Quinn Ewers, that's a pretty damn salty team. Red zone problems be damned, because that is like the one thing that really leaves something to be desired for Texas right now is what goes on in the red zone. But they are playing at a very high level. The defense is legit. Their playmakers on offense are incredible, even without Jonathan Brooks. Now that he's hurt, that's a really good team. And they are doing – what are they doing now? The Alabama game was not really what impressed me about Texas this year. We've seen them get up for big games. We've seen them get up for big-name opponents. What we have not seen them do is consistently take care of beating K-State and Iowa State and Texas Tech, teams like that, and they have done it. And in pretty resounding fashion. Winning in Ames in a November night game, that is not something that Texas has been able to do over the last 15 years. Like, those are the things that have kept them from being where they want to be. Sark, to his credit, has made it happen this year. I definitely doubted that he could, and he absolutely has. So just in fairness here, Texas deserves to be talking a little bit right now. I hope they get shut up on Saturday by Oklahoma State, but they deserve to be talking because they have earned it through this regular season with the way that they have played and proven a lot of people, myself included, wrong on that front. So look at that. I'm saying nice things about Texas. Say nice things about Texas on a live show here. What is happening, everybody? Not sure what is happening to me on that front. All right, we're going to talk a little about the coaching carousel here. Thank you, Arturo. I appreciate you, my friend. Arturo, thank you for being a part of the show. Arturo asked if I'm surprised that Baylor is sticking with Dave Aranda. Maybe mildly surprised. I'm not surprised that sticking with Dave Aranda comes with a number of stipulations, because I think if you are going to stick with Aranda, it had to be like that. It had to be like, hey, something's got to change here. We can't keep doing the exact same thing that we've been doing. I don't know. I tend to look, I have a personal bias toward liking Aranda. I've always liked the guy, not just like what he's been as a head coach, but I know a lot of you guys have heard this a million times, but I just like his demeanor. I like that he's not like the big yell and scream sort of head coach, you know, his calm, chill, like Zen-like demeanor. That was appealing to me, but this is a major gamble. The guy's 6-12 in the Big 12 the last 2 years. He's 23-25 overall. And I know that, like, even through Pete Thamel, who was clearly talking to sources at Baylor, he said the big pitch is that freshmen accounted for over 4,000 snaps this year. That was 1,000 more than anyone else in the league. So the pitch is like, hey, we were really young. We're bringing back a young roster that will now have some experience, and we believe that they're talented. I guess that's in the eye of the beholder, how much talent you think is actually there. But it's also going to come with a bunch of changes. And this is what I meant when I said, if you were going to do this, if you were going to bring him back, it was going to need to be with a bunch of things different. The biggest of those things is going to be that Jeff Grimes is out as the offensive coordinator, and they are now looking for candidates with, quote, head coaching experience and an explosive offensive style. I was reading a Texas football article, and my apologies, I don't know if they were pulling from like 365 or somebody else here, so I just don't want to misplace the credit. I had pulled up an article from Texas football that listed Matt Wells, Dino Babers, Sean Lewis, and Jake Spavital, all as potential candidates there for the offensive coordinator. Matt Wells, I've seen get a little bit of run with the Oklahoma opening that's now there because Jeff Lebby took the job at Mississippi State, which, like, Mississippi State, bro. I don't know that I want Jeff Lebby as my offensive coordinator, let alone my head coach. That one I can't say I'm a fan of if I'm a Mississippi State fan, but they made the hire, and Oklahoma I think now may fail upwards here by getting to replace him as their offensive coordinator. Anyway, so yeah, Matt Wells, potential interest there to be the Baylor offensive coordinator and or the Oklahoma offensive coordinator. Dino Babers just fired. Sean Lewis, I guess you could say just fired basically by Colorado. And then Jake Spavital. look, I think any one of those guys would be a pretty good, that'd be certainly a hell of a name to throw in there. And I would not complain about any of those if I were a Baylor fan. And so I guess the hedge there is like, hey, Aranda is going to still be head coach, but we'll get an explosive offensive mind, and we'll bring in somebody that has some head coaching experience to perhaps give a little bit of a boost to Dave Aranda here in what will be a crucial year. The other thing is Baylor is promising, and this is what we're seeing a lot. I think it sounded like a similar thing was where was the other job that I saw? Coach was being retained. Arkansas was the other one where it sounded like, hey, we're going to throw a bunch more money into NIL. We're going to make a bigger NIL commitment and get that push behind the coach here, keep them around for a year, and let's go do that thing. Baylor says they are implementing an aggressive game plan moving forward that represents a dramatic shift for the program, and that is all in reference to NIL and the transfer portal, with Dave Aranda admitting that he was perhaps a little bit too late onto that train after a couple of years ago and now wants to more fully embrace that. So I would just say mildly surprised. And I'm mildly surprised because I knew that the fan sentiment from Baylor fans seemed to be very much in favor of moving on from Dave Aranda. How much cachet do you buy if 2 years later you're sitting here at 3-9? We found out it was just enough for Aranda to survive and maintain that job. I'm not sure that I would have as an outsider, if I have like a strong preference, what I thought Baylor should have done, I'd probably lean toward, I don't think that this Aranda thing is coming back around, but we've seen plenty of cases, ask Nebraska about Frank Solich. Now it's a different deal. He was still winning games, but Nebraska too antsy to get rid of a head coach. There have been plenty who have gotten rid of a guy, or like Missouri. A lot of people wanted Gary Pinkel gone for a long time. They kept Gary Pinkel around, and eventually he pulled it together and had a great run at Mizzou. So not unprecedented for a guy to pull it off in this sort of scenario, but I would still say mildly surprised. And if it were me, I would have probably leaned slightly toward going ahead and moving on, especially when you look at, and this is where the Houston conversation comes in. Houston had a guy in basically the exact same scenario in Dana Holgorsen, and they decided to go ahead and get rid of him and move on. And they're going to pony up $15 million to get rid of him. This is another unknown factor with Aranda because Baylor is a private institution. We don't know the specific details of the buyout there for Aranda. I'm sure it's pretty sizable after getting a contract extension after winning the Big 12 in 12 games. But look, you have Dana Holgorsen, who went 12-2 2 years ago and won a conference title. That's the exact same thing that Dave Aranda did. And then back-to-back years of regression. And Houston said, that's not good enough for us. We're going to go ahead and fire him and move on and try and find the next guy. So when you hold it up to that, I would say that's a piece of why I'm mildly surprised, and I may have just gone ahead and done it, because everybody else, there are a ton of really good coaches in this league, and everybody is now realizing how badly they're going to need to have a good one at the helm of their program, with so much parity coming in this league with a bunch of good coaches. Say what you will about Coach Prime, but he's coming in. Jed Fish is coming in. Kyle Whittingham is coming in. That's going to add to a conference that already has Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, Mike Gundy, Matt Campbell, lots of very, very good coaches. Sonny Dykes, I still think the jury's very much out on him, but the guy was in the national championship game last year. You got a lot of competition, and you've got a lot of really good head coaches. That's why every single season we go through the coaching carousel, it's always Big 12 names that are there, and we're talking about Big 12 names. So that'd be the thing. I would just be a little worried if I were a Baylor fan that hey, everybody else is being very aggressive with this. We're taking a bit more of a conservative approach with the way that we are doing this. It's a risk either way, but it definitely does feel like a risk to bring Aranda back the way that they did. So I understand that was a little bit of a hedge. I'm a little bit all over the board, but in the end, if you really pushed me on it, I would have said I would have gotten rid of him. I would have moved on. I would have felt some pressure based on what everybody else is doing. Now we'll see Calico, I'll get to you here in just a moment. We'll see what Houston is able to pull off here. A part of it is I'm seeing Jeff Traylor's name thrown out a bunch for the Houston opening. To me, that's probably too apple pie high in the sky hopes to get Jeff Traylor. I think he would be a home run hire. He's at UTSA right now and has been doing a phenomenal job there. It'd be great It'd be great if Houston can get him. He was getting a little bit of run with the Texas A&M job there for a minute. I think he's going to be in line to get a pretty good, pretty big job. So I would have my doubts that Houston could pull that off. I would love it if they could. I just have my doubts. Willie Fritz is another name that I've seen there from Tulane. That's another guy that I don't know. I mean, it feels like he could get a pretty solid Power 5 job at some point in time. Is Houston the one that he's going to want to make the move to? It is a pretty similar kind of deal with a school that's in a big metro area, a big market, a big city. And now we'll just have Power 5 resources, be in a Power 5 league. It will represent somewhat of a step up there. But, Fritz is in his 60s, has been at Tulane for a long time. I think he's a guy that can be picky if he really does want to move. I would also feel like that's just a smidge on the unrealistic side. But how about Gary Patterson? That is a name that I'm seeing a lot. For this Houston gig. Gary Patterson would be absolutely fascinating, man. I mean, I would love to see Gary Patterson take the job at Houston. Former Big 12 head coach, 2-time National Coach of the Year, 6-time conference champion. The guy's won the Big 12 before, damn near made the college football playoff before. How would that go over? Now, Gary Patterson is the type of guy that it felt like the game was passing him by a bit. And I don't really mean in terms of like concept and scheme and like what's happening on the field. I mean, in terms of NIL and the transfer portal. And, Gary's a little bit more cut from that old school cloth. So he would have to have, I think, probably reformed somewhat with that without knowing the full details of what was happening at TCU by the end of his tenure. But being at Texas probably has helped some with that because he's seen like how Texas does it with a very hardy NIL operation and all the resources that they have at their disposal, including just a huge support staff, a huge coaching staff. So I'm all for that. And if Houston is not able, I would certainly make a run at Jeff Traylor. If Willie Fritz is somebody they believe in too, I would certainly make a run at him. I think those are great coaches. Make them say no. But if they do, I would love looking into Gary Patterson there. I also can get why Houston fans would say, hey, we kind of just did that. We had the Big 12 retread coach, but nothing against Dana Holgorsen. I very much enjoy the guy, but Gary Patterson was a much more accomplished coach in the Big 12 than what Dana Holgorsen was, and just a much more accomplished head coach overall than what Dana Holgorsen was. So yes, it is the retread head coach from the conference, but he is somebody that has accomplished a lot more than Dana Holgorsen. I think in the end, the more likely scenario is that it winds up being more like an up-and-coming offensive coordinator, maybe defensive coordinator, but Houston strikes me as, they'd be more interested in the offensive side of the ball there. I think that's probably the more likely route that this goes by the time it's all said and done, but it's fascinating stuff. And I will be very interested to see how much interest there is in that job from guys that are of the caliber of everybody I just mentioned off on the list there. Now that they are in a Power 4, I guess we can call it a Power 4 conference, like second tier Power 4 conference, how much interest will that draw to a place with a world of potential based on the recruiting territory that you are in? Okay. Calico. What's up, Calico? Thank you for being here. I appreciate your support as always, my friend. Calico says, hi, John. Last night was not fun. LOL. Glad it's still basketball season, though. Who do you think comes back for the Cats? It was not fun at all, Calico. Incredibly frustrating night. I do not expect Will Howard to be back. If you watched his press conference after the game, that certainly sounded like a guy who was going to be done. Thanked the media for everything they've done. Talked a lot about how much he grew at K-State, how much it meant for him. It was very much like the swan song kind of press conference that Will Howard had. So whether it's going to be NFL or the portal, I would not expect Will Howard to be back. I think the Avery Johnson era has basically begun at K-State. I think the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be like Kobe Savage, Austin Moore, Uso Seumalo, who, by the way, I think that was low-key somebody K-State really missed yesterday, as he was not able to play at nose tackle. Those are guys with decisions. I've even heard like a little bit that like Daniel Green may be kicking around the idea of coming back for, I think it would be a 7th year after he had the season-ending injury this year. Those are some guys that will have decisions. Who else am I missing here? I feel like Trayshawn Ward. Trayshawn Ward is somebody that will have a decision at running back. That's a pretty good start, I feel like, to the list of names that you'd want to be paying attention to and seeing what it is that they're going to do with their future at K-State. So I would definitely take most, if not all of those guys back if they do want to come back. Keenan Garber is another one on defense that would still technically have a year of eligibility if you wanted to keep him around at corner. So those are the names, and I would encourage you to listen to Three Ma Calico if you're not already. Wherever you find your podcast, listen to Three Ma, and we'll keep you up to date on everything that's going on with that. Derek, obviously, being the guy who is really in the know on that front. Okay, Julius, what's up, Julius? Julius, thank you for being here. Thank you for your generous support as always, my friend. I really do appreciate it. Julius, far too kind as always, says, howdy, John. After this season, all I can say is go Cougs. Look, you should be proud, Julius, and I know I said this earlier, but you should be very proud of the effort that BYU put forth in the last 2 weeks of the season. Raising their game without the starting quarterback, with the young guy, Jake Retzloff, to come within, I think, one bad play call of beating Oklahoma. If you don't throw the ball on the 1 yard line, I think you're beating Oklahoma last week. And then double overtime in Stillwater against Oklahoma State with literally everything on the line for the Cowboys, like the Big 12 championship game appearance on the line for the Cowboys, and you go to double overtime in Stillwater. Again, hell of a performance. I would take some optimism from that. So that would be my message to you. That would be my message to you and all of the Cougar fans out there. Take solace in the fact that you guys finished the year pretty damn strong and put a real scare into both Bedlam schools. So Julius, thank you for being here. Thank you for your generous support of the channel as always. And I really, really genuinely do appreciate it. Cyclone Steve, will ISU's freshmen develop more, or have we peaked? Well, I think it's certainly reasonable to expect that they have developed more. And I wouldn't say that they have peaked, but what I will say is I will come back to my real Matt Campbell take here now, which I think he is a very high floor, moderate ceiling coach. The COVID year, we could debate that until the cows come home. I would still say the fact that, Iowa State, Texas A&M, North Carolina, there were schools that have achieved much higher in that 1 year than they have at any other point here in recent history lends some credence to me to the fact that it was just a really wonky year and some weird stuff happened. And then the next year, Iowa State brought everybody back. They had all that talent, all these NFL guys, Brock Purdy, who's doing a great job in the league now, and they went 7-6. So I think Campbell is just a guy that, like, when you count him out and you think his team's going to be terrible, he's going to find a way to make that roster pretty salty and be a team that can compete at least in the middle of the conference. And then when you start to get your hopes real high, he can let you down a bit, because I don't know how high that ceiling actually is with his style and everything that he's doing. So no, I don't think they peaked. I don't think that would be fair to say at all, but I also wouldn't be turning around expecting like a 10-win season next year for Iowa State. I think they'll be 6 to 9 wins. Who did I say was 6 to 9 earlier? Was that West Virginia? Maybe, I don't know. Like 6 to 9 wins for Iowa State next year, probably. That's where I would put the Clones. So no, I think you have a lot to be excited about. Steve. Eddie, what's up, Eddie? Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Remember, everybody, if you need a real estate agent in San Antonio, give my guy Eddie a call. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Appreciate you as always, my friend. Thank you for your support of the channel. Eddie says, hi, John. I'm a Cowboy fan this week. Go Pokes. Yes, indeed. Go Pokes. Pistols firing, baby. Pistols firing. Shout out to Dave Hunziker. What a great season. Can't wait for next year with the new incoming 4 teams. It will be very, very interesting and intriguing next year. It's already started to register for me when I was looking up. Oh, it was Texas Tech. I said 6 to 9 wins next year. When I started looking up like the Texas Tech schedule, and I'm looking at like, boy, you got Arizona, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Arizona. You start rattling off the names. It's like, oh, boy, that is literally coming next year. It's going to look a lot different and be a crazy year. I think a crazy year with a lot of parity, which makes it even more imperative for Oklahoma State to go get it done, win that last Big 12 championship with Texas and Oklahoma in the league. Nobody can dispute that. Nobody can dispute the strength of the league this year in terms of being a legitimate, bona fide power conference on a level with basically anything else out there. I don't know if you guys have watched Big Ten football this year. I get it. Ohio State and Michigan are pretty good, but boy, take a look around at the rest of the league. Like, I think it's totally fair to say that you're pretty competitive there, and you've got Texas up at the top of the league. close to the playoff. You got Oklahoma close to the New Year's Six discussion. And hey, maybe Oklahoma State will win that title game and be a third team that can really be in that same category too. So, Eddie, I am right there with you. Let's go get it done, Gundy. Go get it done, man. You've had a hell of a year so far. Find a way to raise that level from where you've been for the last 3 weeks and shake the Bedlam hangover. Get it done against Texas. I'd imagine we will have a really focused Oklahoma State team. We had a good quote. I was going to try and find the Mike Gundy quote that I pulled. I did chuckle at a little bit. Gundy said, in regards to them winning and making the Big 12 championship game, he said, quote, "I'm going to guess the Big 12 conference is excited about that. And I think it's also good for us, the ones that are staying in the conference. I think it's a positive thing." I just laughed at like, hey, I'm going to guess the Big 12 conference is excited about that. Yeah, I would imagine, when Brett Yormark said that Tech needs to take care of business in Austin, and then they lost 57-7. But if he was saying that in the offseason, I think it's a fair assumption to say that the Big 12 would be pretty happy with Oklahoma State making it there. That, by the way, is another reason, back to the Texas conversation. And I said, Texas does have every right now to be talking. It was not just the fact that they've handled all these games that they typically wouldn't handle, but they demolished Texas Tech after Brett Yormark did go out there and say like, hey, Tech, you guys need to take care of business. And joke or not, I was perfectly fine with the comment. I think Texas fans blew it into way too much. But you also got to understand, if you're going to do that and then Texas goes and wins the game by 50, then Texas is going to come back and have something to say about it, and they probably should. And, Joey McGuire had quotes out there about, Big 12 runs through Lubbock. And I know he's talking to his team, I believe, in that quote. But there's a lot of bravado from Joey McGuire and company this year. So Texas did earn it. They did earn it. I don't like it, but they did earn it. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel is my guy. Daniel says next year's Big 12 favorites, Arizona Wildcats, Fish, stud. He's a stud. Jed Fish is a total stud. Arizona's really good, and I am not at all looking forward to playing them in Manhattan in the non-conference next year. That's right. K-State has a non-con game that had been previously scheduled against Arizona. I want really no piece of that right now. I don't love that K-State not only has that, but they've got to go to Tulane. So on second thought, if Willie Fritz wants to take the Houston job, I suppose that would be great. I don't want to play Willie Fritz on the road at Tulane after losing to Tulane at home just last year. So that'll be tricky. That'll be very, very tricky. Alan, what's going on, Alan? I appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for being here. Alan said, Jason Bean saved his best for Cincinnati. Wish we had Jason in the KSU game. Sorry to see Will Howard lose his last game. He's a class act. Look forward to our bowl game in the Big 12 basketball season. Rock Chuck Jayhawk. Alan, I appreciate you. You are also a class act, my friend. And so is Jason Bean, by the way. Man, I really like the guy. I know, he's a Kansas quarterback. I shouldn't like the guy. I have a much harder time getting behind Jalen Daniels as somebody that I like, but Jason Bean seemed like a good dude who never got probably the amount of respect that he deserved. Maybe he's starting to now from Kansas fans, but probably throughout the course of his career didn't get the respect that he deserved from Kansas fans, and really saved them the last 2 years. What does that look now? Kotelnicki and company, they can really game plan. And I know my whole take is that it is kind of a system quarterback deal there where they can win with almost anybody, but he does bring some traits that are hard to replicate and probably save them, 2 to 3 games over the last 2 years combined with his efforts with all the injuries that Jalen Daniels had. So yeah, Jason Bean deserves a lot of credit for that. And I was definitely sad to see Will Howard lose his last game. There's of all the crazy stats and how bad the K-State defense was, I think if there's one person who should be more upset about that than almost anybody, it is Will Howard, because now he had his down moments in the game. He threw a really bad pick late. He threw probably 3 or 4 other balls that definitely could have been intercepted. He was not completely sharp. He was also throwing with a bunch of snow everywhere and did hit, it was typical Will Howard. He had some really nice throws and he had some really bad throws, but the offense scored 35 points. It was enough in a snowstorm, certainly, to reasonably say you could win the game like that. And instead, the defense has this historically bad day. And so everyone's frustrated that Will couldn't come up with a 98-yard touchdown drive to tie the game late. And they got fairly close, but not all the way there. And I think he, as he usually does, takes a little bit too much criticism in that scenario, even though I certainly would not tell you that he played a great game. I think he played an okay game. but he's getting ripped more than he should. And if the defense would have just played an average game, K-State probably wins that. And this would not be the deal that's happening right now. And there would be a little bit more celebration for the highs of his career as he left on senior day. So I definitely feel bad for him there too. But yes, Alan, you should look forward to the bowl game. You should be very proud. Kansas 8-win season, man. A lot of people expected and predicted a bit of a regression from Kansas this year, maybe back to 5 wins and saying like, hey, you keep the program competitive. That's going to be, everything's in a really good spot. Nope. How about 8 wins for Kansas? Lance is legit, man. That whole staff is really legit. Delarick, what's up, Delarick? Delarick says, shout out to UCF. Glad to see at least one of the new schools is bowl eligible. Yes, again, cheers. Cheers to UCF. I was also happy to see them get bowl eligible. BYU almost joined them, damn near joined them, and Houston had an outside shot going into the last 2 weeks of the regular season. And at one point, they're a 4-win team, and they've got Oklahoma State down 2 touchdowns in the first half. It was looking like, hey, maybe Houston can really pull this off too. But yeah, learning experience for the 4 newcomers as to what life in a Power 4 league is like. But UCF was the one that managed to fight and scrap their way through to actually getting bowl eligible. And that does not surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all, especially with Gus Malzahn as the head coach. There's a reason why we saw the report last week that Arkansas has been interested in him for a long time, because Gus Malzahn is a pretty damn good coach that got too quick of a hook at Auburn, a place where they are crazy. And I don't know. Gus Malzahn maybe had to laugh a little bit at Auburn this weekend and what they gave up to Alabama there on 4th and goal from the 31. Good old gravedigger play. Hell of an ending. Nate, what's up, Nate? Nate says, and appreciate your support, Nate. Nate says, hi, John. I wish your Wildcats good luck in their bowl game. Can we take a minute to shout out the Big 12 for getting ESPN to broadcast the first ever college dual wrestling meet? Oh, hey, I didn't even know that. All right. Shout out Big 12 for getting a college dual wrestling meet on a broadcast there. It's weird to me because like K-State doesn't have wrestling, so I've never really had much of a reason to try and follow it at all. But obviously I know about the history and tradition at Oklahoma State. And Iowa State's pretty good too, right? Is that right? I'm kind of talking out over my skis on that front a bit. But yeah, I wrestled for 1 year in high school. I was a terrible JV wrestler. I know exactly how hard it is. I hated every second of it. It did get me in really good shape though. But yeah, much respect there. And best of luck to the Clones too in the bowl game. I would guess, based on what I was hearing a little bit earlier today, I would guess that Iowa State is probably headed to Houston for the Texas Bowl. Sounded like that's where a lot of the scuttlebutt was on where ISU may wind up. It always helps in these scenarios with the bowl games to have a pretty rabid fan base with a track record of traveling, and Iowa State certainly has that. So we shall see. But Nate, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. Michael, thank you for being here. Appreciate you as always, my friend. Michael says, sad to see BYU lose. Big 12 sucks. BYU to the SEC. We're too good for all your truck stop schools. We'll run the conference next year. Haha, Utes are lame. Michael doing his Utah impression there. I was kind of pulling there, when Kyle Whittingham's name was getting mentioned for the Texas A&M job. I was like, look, Kyle Whittingham is going to be great for the Big 12 to have him in the league, but there's a part of me, like with the Utah fans, it would be very funny to see Kyle Whittingham, as Utah was getting ready to embark on the Big 12 conference, to see Whittingham jump ship. But certainly never expected that legitimately to happen. I definitely did not expect that to happen. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough break, Michael, for BYU. But again, I reiterate, be proud of the effort the last 2 weeks. Hell of an effort against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And God, if we thought that the 4 newcomers this year, maybe got a little out over their skis as far as their ego goes, can only imagine what it's going to look like for Utah next year as they come into the league. So we've had our battles. I could see Utah fans turning themselves into, one of the more hated fan bases in the Big 12 pretty quickly next year. Definitely something to monitor, Michael. Definitely something to monitor. Alan chimes in again to say, go Pokes beat Texas. Love it, Alan. Love it. Go Pokes beat Texas indeed. Let's get her done, Gundy. Let's get her done. Cat fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Thank you, Daniel. Great to hear from you as always. Daniel says the Iowa teams were hard on the Cats football and women's basketball team this weekend. At least the Chiefs beat the Raiders today, and Gardner won the Kansas 6A football title. My sister teaches there. All right. Was that a snow game? Because I saw there were a bunch of Kansas State title games that were being played in the snow, which on one hand seems cool, and I'm sure that's a very memorable experience. On the other hand, I do kind of hate state championship games potentially being affected by the weather. But congrats to Gardner. Go Cats and go Pokes from Daniel. I didn't see what the women's basketball final was. I know it was like a 5-point game in the third quarter between K-State and Iowa. Last I saw, second time they played this non-con. Actually, K-State beat them earlier, but 77-70, 32 for Caitlin Clark, and Iowa beats number 16 K-State. Yeah, it's rough. I've had enough of Iowa. I've had enough of the state of Iowa for one weekend, Daniel. I feel you on that, but hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Yes, Chiefs did get a win. Played a little offense. How about that? Rasheed Rice, man. Rasheed Rice looking pretty damn good. They're finally starting to get him the ball more. I was pleased with the way the Chiefs played after the first, like quarter and a half. From then on, it's pretty good. 31-3 run at one point for the Chiefs in that game. Eddie, hey, Eddie checking back in. Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate you, man. Eddie says, hi, John. I'm a Cowboy fan this week. Go Pokes. What a year. I'm so looking forward to next year with the new teams. If this year was crazy, next year will be better. It will be crazier in terms of, like, I think the parity. This year was definitely wild with the swings because remember, I mean, a month and a half into the season, we were all just resigned to like, oh, damn it. It's going to be Texas, Oklahoma. Everybody else had these dreadful non-conference losses. The narrative, we've lost the narrative. No, we're sitting here with a chance to still reclaim the narrative by the end of the year with Oklahoma State. If we could stand there and say, hey, Oklahoma State is the one getting the trophy, Texas, and that's a team that lost by 26 to South Alabama at home this year, and you're going out 15 years straight without winning the league title, that would be pretty good. That'd be pretty good stuff. But I think what you're going to see next year, I saw a good comp on this. I don't remember if it was Andy Staples. It was some national guy I saw this weekend that said the Big Ten West is basically what the Big 12 will look like. And I know that with some of that, it was probably meant to be talking down a bit, as in like, hey, the Big Ten West is not actually that good, but there's a bunch of parity, weird results, and it typically is going down to the wire as to who's going to win the thing. And an Iowa-y sort of team does. I would say the Big 12 will be a better version of the Big Ten West, but in terms of how the standings will play out and what it's going to look like year to year, there's probably a lot of truth to that the Big Ten would be like, or that the Big 12 would be like the Big Ten West, just pretty balanced and a lot of parity within the teams there. The X factor will be you're going to have tiebreakers, and that again is why I really harped on the tiebreaker thing and how the Big 12 handled that, changing it this year, then trying to lie to everybody and say it was just a clarification and not having it designed well in the first place. That's going to be imperative now. You're going to have even more teams. Tiebreakers are going to be a huge factor, a huge part of what's happening when you're coming down the stretch run of the regular season. So they've got to get that figured out, because I think you're right. I think it is going to be a wild and crazy scenario as we move forward. So good thoughts, Eddie. Good thoughts. And I appreciate your support tonight, checking in multiple times. If you need a real estate agent in San Antonio, guys, you know where to go. Eddie Lozano. Hit up my guy, Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Thank you, sir. Payson Cougar fan, good to hear from you. As always, Payson Cougar fan says, go Cowboys, beat Texas, horns down, Utah still sucks. Hey, we're getting in some shots at Utah. We're getting in some shots at Texas. I like it. Payson Cougar fan. As we're seeing a lot of camaraderie for Oklahoma State and Texas. We'll talk a lot more about that game in the midweek show as we get closer to it, and implications, how Oklahoma State can win the game, all of those sorts of things. But I will be pretty locked in and dialed in this week. Like, there's definitely a lot. Just initial reaction here is like, that could be a pretty significant narrative win for the Big 12 if Oklahoma State gets the victory. And I think everybody understands now, after going through this realignment cycle the last couple of years and where the Big 12 was at the beginning of it all, narrative stuff matters. You can can shrug it off and say, who cares what the media thinks? And no, the narratives really do affect the things in the college football world. Like, you do not want to be fighting really negative narrative battles. And if Texas goes out and blows out Oklahoma State, that will suck. That will be deflating, and that will definitely suck. Arturo, what's up, Arturo? Checking in again. Appreciate you, man. Arturo says, with the West Coast teams coming to the Big Ten, could Nebraska benefit from recruiting California players like they did with Texas players when they were in the Big 12? Yeah, I think so. Probably so. Nebraska's a unique situation because there's obviously not enough players in the state of Nebraska to really fuel a competitive roster. They've always had to be a program that recruits nationally, and when they were at their peak, they were certainly doing that. With Matt Rule, I mean, I don't know what connections he has necessarily to the West Coast because, like Temple, he's East Coast. He was kind of came up through Penn State, so East Coast, coached down in Texas. I don't know what his connections are actually like out in California, but yes, I do think that is a door that they would probably want to step into now that they can say, hey, you'll be playing some schools here. You might, get to come back home at a point or two during your college career. I would certainly give it a whack if I were Nebraska out there. And I don't follow Nebraska recruiting close enough on a regular basis right now to see if they've already been trying to get into that well or not. But I think it's a good thought. It's a good theory. And it's certainly as good a theory as any for Nebraska in the situation that they're in and having to get out there on a little more national basis. So I thank you, Arturo. I appreciate all of your support and the good questions here tonight on the show. Michael, great point, man. BYU's been killing it in hoops, and I did not expect that. I did not expect much out of BYU hoops-wise this year, but BYU is number 9 in KenPom, 3rd in the Big 12. Basketball is definitely on the way up for the Cougars right now. As if the Big 12 needed to be any more difficult and any more of a grinder in basketball. We've got, I'm going to pull up the standings here. Well, by the way, Arizona is number 4. Houston's number 1 in KenPom. Arizona is number 4. They'll be coming into the league next year. KU is number 5. BYU, I'm seeing now number 10, knocked down to number 10. Baylor, number 11. Oklahoma, 25. Sooners got a nice win over San Diego State, and they're 6-0. So Porter Moser having a nice year this year. Iowa State is 26. They've dropped a couple of games now. TCU 30, Texas 31. K-State 41, 4-2, but the 2 losses to ranked teams. K-State's played a really tough schedule so far this year. USC and Miami are the losses there. So Texas Tech is 46, and that's where we stop within the top 50. But that was, 1, 2. I missed Cincinnati. Cincinnati in there at 3-6. Sorry to the Bearcats. Cincinnati in there at 3-6. There's 3. Texas, TCU 4, 5. Iowa State 6. Oklahoma 7. Baylor 8, BYU 9, Kansas 10, Houston. We've got 11 Big 12 teams in the top 50 of KenPom. It's going to be such a damn hard conference this year to get through. So should be great. I'm definitely really excited for basketball. K-State's got Villanova coming up here in a couple of weeks and it's in Bramlage. Villanova's been playing really well this year, so I'm excited to check that game out. All right. I think that's about it, guys. I appreciate a lively chat tonight. Appreciate all of you guys being here. Thank you so much. As always, go Pokes. We'll keep covering everything this week as to what's going on with the coaching carousel and that big matchup between Oklahoma State and Texas. Look forward to chatting with you again on Wednesday. If anything big happens between now and then, I'll make sure to get you that content as well. So thank you for being here. Tell your friends about it. Spread the word on social media about this channel. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever it is, wherever you're at, Threads, let your friends and family know about this. If there are Facebook groups that are fans of your team, fans of the league, let them know about this channel. Let's continue to grow it. Word of mouth is always great too. If you could like the video on your way out, if you have not, I would really, really appreciate that. Leave a comment in the comment section of the video. Love me, hate me, agree, disagree, weigh in. Let me know your thoughts. Also helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and it is John-Kurtz-4 if you would like to contribute to the channel on Venmo. So with that is farewell. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the fun tonight. Take care, and I will talk to you guys soon.